Welcome back to the Blue Chip Breakdown, Vols fans. I'm your host, Bull. I went through all the clips, seen all the inside notes from day 2 of Fall Camp 2024. I think we had a really good day. We'll be breaking all that down in today's video. And as always, y'all, please make sure to like and subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much to everyone that is a member of this channel. You can become a member by clicking the join button below. Thank you to everyone that's donating. You can donate to the channel by scanning the Cash App QR code in the top right-hand corner with your smartphone. If you're not on your smartphone, the link will be down in the description below next to donate. Also, huge shout out to those of y'all that are joining us on Patreon. And if you haven't already joined us, that link will also be down in the description below. But there will also be a 7-day free trial of that. I just want to get more people because I feel like that could be a great way for us to interact and have a whole lot of fun, especially because football season is here right now, y'all. So let's go ahead and jump into the video. All right, starting off with the injury report, it's the same as it was yesterday. Cam Seldon, Mike Matthews, and Lance Hurd were all limited in today's practice, but Mike Matthews is the only player that, as far as we've heard from the insiders and media, hasn't participated in any drills as long as they've been out there. Keep in mind, they only get to watch the first few periods of practice, so it is possible that Mike Matthews has been getting in some reps once they leave. But I'll say this, just for me personally, I'm a little bit concerned about that. Him not going through any reps, even if it's, well, I would say really even especially if it's more like warm-up stuff. I think that is a little bit of a cause for concern. Hopefully whatever he's dealing with is going to be minor. And if it is minor, then he will be back soon and it won't be a nagging injury for the rest of the season, because I feel like Mike Matthews is a player that can contribute for this team this year. And we'll talk more about Cam Seldon and Lance Hurd as we get to their positions throughout this video. Now, let's talk about who spoke to the media today. Number one, Coach Alec Ablin, who is the tight ends coach. And then we also heard from true freshman offensive tackle Bennett Warren, true freshman running back Peyton Lewis, and true freshman wide receiver Braylon Staley. So starting off with the tight ends coach, Coach Abe, I love several things that he had to say today. But number one, that whole, part about him being very genuine, very candid, talking about struggling to recruit last season and praying and asking God to put the right people inside of his room. It's crazy how God works, because I think that tight end room is the best that Coach Heupel has had maybe ever, but definitely up in Knoxville. So that's huge for him, and hopefully it's just going to add some more confidence to, what he does. But it's pretty easy to tell why all of his players really, really love him. You always hear great things about Coach Abe. Now, just as far as what he had to say about the players inside of that room, he said that the transfer portal players are picking up the offense faster than Callie Castles did last season. I think a big part of that's probably because they both came from Power 5 schools, and then Callie came from a D1 AA program. But that's huge because we are expecting a really big year from that entire room. And those guys being new to this team, being able to pick it up very quickly is huge. He also said some good things about Ethan Davis, saying he's very athletic. He's got up to 245 pounds. That was the biggest question mark from last year. And he said great things about all of them as leaders. So you can tell that he has a lot of confidence inside of that room. Also sounds like he really likes Cole Harrison. So that's huge. And I can't wait to see Cole Harrison. We have not seen really much, if any, of the tight ends, just a few little clips of him catching the football, things like that. But I would love to really see some of those guys go to work. So hopefully in Saturday's, practice highlight clips and all that stuff, we will be able to see that. Now, let's talk about Bennett Warren. He, spoke about just coming in and getting acclimated to this system. So he ran an up-tempo offense in high school, but it's completely different doing it in college, especially with the Josh Heupel offense. So he said he's just getting, adjusted to it. He also spoke about being left-handed, so he can play left tackle, but they're starting him off on the right side, which is about what we thought. And, the insiders and everyone has been saying he has recreated his body. So that was the biggest thing. That was my biggest question mark, is how good a shape can he come in from high school to college? Because you got to be in great shape to play inside of this system. It sounds like he's bought into all that. It sounds like he's very, very happy with his decision to come on up to Knoxville. We said it's a great family feel and vibe, but everyone says that, so it must be true. I feel great just hearing him speak. Very articulate, very intelligent, just a really, really well-spoken young man. So let's talk about Braylon Staley, because he spoke, in a little bit of a different way, because he did come up here in spring. He said, hey, I'm starting to get this offense. It's starting to make sense to me now. And that's really big, because we think that he can also help us out on the field this season. He also just talked about some competition between him and Boo. He said that wide receiver room is really deep. He also spoke very highly of the defense as a whole and the competition and, just things like that. So proud of him as well. Another very well-spoken young man. Now let's talk about what Peyton Lewis had to say. I think I took a lot from him today. Number one, he's very confident, and I love that. You've got to be confident if you're going to come and play in this league, especially as a true freshman. And I'm going to go out here and say, man, I've kind of been saying it, but I'm going to say it again. I think that he could end up being maybe running back number two. If it's not week one, then maybe by week two if Cam Seldon's not back. But I mean, just imagine him and Cam Seldon. Also, I think, Deshaun Bishop, Keith, all those guys, we've got a really deep room. I did not mention Dylan Sampson because I don't think that I have to. We already know what he brings to the table. But that's big. So I just want to get that out of the way. He also just kind of spoke about the differences from his high school's offense to this offense. And he said that he's up for that challenge. He couldn't really compare himself to a college or an NFL running back. I love to hear that because he looks at himself as his own player and he's different. So I think that that's going to be really big. I also heard some good things about them just as wide receivers, that entire room as wide receivers from the insiders, but we will get to that here in just a second. But let's start off with the offensive line because everyone is going to be, wondering what the heck is going on with Lance Hurd. So if you have not already seen it, he was out there practicing today, which is huge. He was limited and he was a little bit gimpy. So in my opinion, I'm not a doctor. I'm not an expert on this stuff. I've seen a whole lot of injuries. I think that he might have some sort of a knee sprain, which would explain that big brace that he's wearing, just to kind of keep him, from re-aggravating that. But at the same time, he's out there and he's just trying to work himself back into playing. So that's a great sign that he is out there. And I think that the, belief is the more that he can get out there, if he can gradually increase it, then he will be able to get stronger and stronger. So hopefully I would say by week one, he should be ready. And if he's not, then, maybe just leave him out. Obviously we're not going to need him versus UT Chattanooga. Just leave him out. We can build up some more depth. Obviously, Dane Davis is still here. Larry Johnson is still here. I think that they both look really good. Larry Johnson has recreated his body. I mean, he's moving so quick. He's so fast. That's something, too, that I've said for a while is my biggest concern with our tackles is being beat with speed. And I think that having some guys that are a little bit more agile can kind of help to prevent that. So I think that we're fine right there. Also, Jesse Perry, I think, is a really big story because he is kind of worked up in that depth chart. We spoke about that yesterday. He was running with the twos on the right side, but he's also working at guard, and they said that he could be getting some reps at center. So I think that he looked really good in practice. I believe I also heard that he's up over 300 pounds now. He came in at like 274, 275, and he's at like 310. So can he give us anything this season? Will he get into the, mix right there at left guard? Will he be fighting for some time with guys like Sham Umarov, Jackson Lampley, and Andre Carrick? It's going to be very exciting. I love this offensive line. It feels so deep in all of the right places. I want to see what happens with Bison Lang. Obviously, we talked about that yesterday at the backup center spot. Someone has got to step up right there, especially if we're going to have Lance Hurd, out. I'm not saying that I've heard that he's going to be out. I've heard that it is a very minor injury. But if he is going to be out or if it's a nagging injury, Dane Davis can't play in more than one spot. So again, y'all, I think that we're deep, especially, guards. Our guards this year are very, very deep. We've got some options at tackle. We just got to find a very solid, surefire answer at the backup center spot. Now, let's move on to the defensive line. They looked great. Some of my biggest takeaways from today wasn't necessarily with our guys because we already know that they're going to do what they do. But I think that Carson Gentle looks really good. Like, he just looks big. Now, I haven't seen him doing a whole lot. Obviously, no pads are on. So how much can he compete versus our offensive line and also versus, his teammates inside of that room will be the biggest question. But I think that he looks really good. I will keep on talking about Emmanuel Okoye because he's so tall. He's so long. I think he might be 6'6" or 6'7". He's another one that could still be growing. I think that he could maybe work himself into the rotation versus, some of these UT Chattanooga types of teams. And I think that he could be very impressive in those instances. But obviously, he's still pretty new to football. How much has he picked it up? That's what I can't wait to see, especially once those pads come on. Also just think that the interior of our defensive line, dude, they look so good. Elijah Simmons is very impressive. For him to be that big, 330 pounds, and be able to move and change directions like that and bend, he's so explosive. I think that he might be the most impressive player that I've seen this out of these, 2 little days of fall camp so far, just from the way that he looks. Jordan Ross continues to look very impressive. Jason Jenkins looks really good. 6'6", 280 pounds, carries it very well. So anyway, y'all already know, that room looks really deep. There were no real notes from the insiders or anything like that. They just continue to talk about how good they look. Tyree Weathersby, Jordan Ross, just that whole bunch. several bodies, super duper deep. And it's going to be fun to see, how the different packages look because we can mix and match. We've got a whole lot of different body types. Just very, very excited about what that room is going to be bringing to this team. Next, let's talk about the wide receiver room, starting off with Brew McCoy. Very happy to see him back. And on Saturday, we're going to be in shells. So how does he kind of, react to having some pads on? Obviously, they're not going to be hitting him. Definitely not in his lower body. But how does he react? Because I think that he will be anxious to get in on some contact. That's going to be very important for his confidence throughout this entire season. But, man, he just looks so well put together. I also want to talk about Chaz Nimrod because he might be the closest in size to Brew McCoy. He's 6'3", 220 pounds. Brew's 6'3", 230 pounds. But Chaz Nimrod was probably our most, I would say, consistent wide receiver last year outside of Brew and Squirrel. And then once Brew went down, we only had two wide receivers that we could trust. Now, Dante Thornton did come on towards the, very, very end of the season for like a game or two. But whenever you talk about that consistency, how much is that going to play a factor in him potentially either being the backup in the slot or maybe even a starter in the slot? I think that because we have so many different bodies, we can mix and match and do a lot of different things that Coach Heupel has not had the opportunity to do. He's never had a wide receiver room that's anywhere near this deep. I mean, I would say the deepest that we've had is maybe 3 wide receivers, so now whenever you got 5 or 6 guys that you trust, what is he going to do? So I think it's going to be a lot of fun just from that perspective. And it starts off, in my opinion, with those 2 wide receivers. Now let's talk about Squirrel because I love his game. He's a dog. He's a smaller guy. He has picked up weight, but he's fast. He's explosive, and he's going to make those tough catches. That's going to be very, very important, especially if we're trying to play small ball. You put him out there, you can still make those tough catches versus these SEC teams or playoff teams, in critical situations. So that's huge. Obviously, he was our leading wide receiver last season. He's coming back with a whole lot of confidence. I love the fact that just kind of going through, catching balls on air, he's still making people miss and all that type of stuff. So he's going to be ready to rock and roll. Now, let's talk about Chris Browser because I saw a clip from yesterday's practice where he is catching a touchdown from Nico. It sounds like maybe that's Nico's favorite. We've seen several of those clips dating all the way back to spring. And, we heard a few people talking about, like Ricky Gibson saying, hey, look, he is the most difficult player for me to guard. So that's huge. I think that says a lot about how good of a player he is at 6'5", long, kind of lanky, but he's very strong, very wiry. Reminds me of Justin Hunter. Is he going to be as productive as Justin Hunter, or will he be even more productive than Justin Hunter was? Either way, I think he's going to mean a whole lot to this team, and I would not be surprised to see him working for sure in that 2 deep and maybe even being a starter on week 1. Now, Dante Thornton, haven't seen or heard a whole lot from him, but he's looked good from what I have seen. It's very, very limited. Maybe I would say 2, maybe 3 clips in the past couple of days, but I mean, he looks good. He looks big. And I know that he's going to be a huge mismatch nightmare, especially I would say in that red zone. That's where we'll probably be targeting him at the most. Now, Braylon Staley, we got to see 1 clip of him. He looks good. Obviously, he's gotten bigger. And as we spoke about, he's getting more acclimated to this offense. That's going to be huge because I think that he can also contribute. And hopefully, Mike Matthews will be able to, just kind of get himself back healthy. Haven't seen Caleb Webb. It was weird because last spring, we didn't really see a whole lot of Chaz Nimrod, but we saw a lot of Caleb Webb. And then, in this one, I don't feel like I've seen as much of Caleb Webb. I have seen some. He does look good in the few clips that I have seen, but I just feel like I've seen Chaz Nimrod a little bit more. Either way, very, very deep inside of this room. And it's going to be so much fun for Coach Heupel, for Coach Halsley, for Nico, for the entire team, right? To have all these weapons just because we've never been this deep before. Now, let's move on to the defensive backs, that secondary. I love how we look, y'all. I mean, I really do. I think we look great going through these drills, but I mean, typically you always do. Those are the most athletic players on your team, so they should look really good going through the drills. But even some small things that I've noticed with the transitions, how quickly are we getting in and out of our breaks going through those drills? It is better this season than it was last year. And that's huge just because if you want to play man, if you want to play zone, you've got to be able to get in and out of your transitions very well. Now, something that I had kind of started to talk about in the highlights that we put out earlier today was us being able to play zone at a very high level and still have good coverage as opposed to playing man. Now, you're going to have to switch it up. You can't just stick to one thing all the time. Typically, you're not going to be 50-50. There's something that this staff is going to feel like we play better than the other. But I love the way that we look just going through that, little zone drill, just because I can tell, again, the way that people are explosive out of their breaks, the way that you can tell they understand what's going on, that they're going to be in the right spots. They're going to bait the quarterback sometimes to, hey, I'm going to back off like we're watching the cornerbacks in cover two, where you start up inside of that flat area close to the line of scrimmage, but then you kind of sink some, to that honey hole area. And, seeing these guys kind of sinking back, but knowing, especially a guy like Jamal McCoy, that they can, boom, jump up real quick. That's where those interceptions come from. That could be a pick six. But that's my whole point, is that, whatever suits us the best, I think that we will play it better than we did last year, right? I think that our secondary is going to be better in coverage, period, whether it's zone or it's man. So that is something for us to look forward to for sure. I really like how Kobe Thomas looks. Been hearing great things about him. Boo Carter just looks incredible. I mean, just all the guys. Now, we talked a little bit about Christian Charles. Could he end up being the starting safety right there next to Kobe Thomas, or would it be John Slaughter? I still think it's going to be Kobe Thomas starting for sure, but that would be big. You still have Andre Turrentine and you have John Slaughter. Now, all of a sudden, that room looks a lot deeper because he looked great kind of going through all those drills, great in the transitions. He's a really good athlete. Everyone keeps on raving about him. So I feel a lot better about that safety room as a whole. It sounds like the star so far has been obviously Jordan Thomas, Boo Carter, and Christian Harrison. So, all those guys, I mean, you have to trust them, but you really don't know what you get until, you get out into some live reps with the pads on, starting off on Saturday. But then in the scrimmages, that's where I'm looking for the most notes from in the position areas that we are a little bit concerned about. So stay tuned for that. It will be coming up here, I think, at some point next week. We're supposed to be scrimmaging. All right, so let's talk about our running back room. Again, didn't really see a whole lot from them, but I love how Peyton Lewis looks. And we touched on this some yesterday. He looks big. He looks like he's ready to play. He looks like a prototype running back, from top to bottom. So that's going to be really, really big. I also love how Deshaun Bishop looks. I mean, he's rocked up. He's solid. And we know that he runs hard. We've seen that from his high school film. We've seen it in both springs. So he's a guy that I think can also handle it. I want to say I heard Dylan Sampson talking about Deshaun Bishop being a tough guy, running hard, all that good stuff. So I think that we're good inside of that room. Didn't really talk about Khalifa Keith, but he's bigger, like we spoke about yesterday. Bigger, probably faster, or, he's definitely bigger and stronger. I don't know if he's faster just yet, but he still looks like he has about the same amount of twitch. So I feel very confident. And again, we don't talk a whole lot about Dylan Sampson, but just watching him kind of coming out of the backfield, making catches, he looks very explosive, very sharp, definitely bigger than he was last season. I think he's going to have a huge year. Now, one of my biggest questions is going to be, how much are we going to use Dylan Sampson throughout fall camp? I don't think he needs to get too in a rest, but he has to get some. So how do we kind of navigate through that? And then in week one versus UT Chattanooga, again, he's got to get some reps right there. But I would say maybe, in a perfect world, you just play him for maybe 3 or 4 series. You go out there and score on 3 or 4 series. You're up, 21-28 to nothing, hopefully all in the first quarter. And then you can take him out and then get some more reps for some of these younger guys, some of these depth pieces. And that could also be a determining factor in how the, depth chart will look in week 2. Hopefully we'll have Cam Seldon back for all that. But yeah, that's a great room. And I'm starting to feel more confident about that one as well. Now for the linebackers, didn't really see or hear anything about them today, but we know how deep that room is. And I can just kind of take you back to yesterday's practice. I think that we're so athletic, seeing all those bodies. Especially Arion Carter. I'm going to keep on talking about him because, man, it's crazy to have a linebacker with that sort of speed. I would say he's got to be sub 4 or 5, y'all. He absolutely has to be at, 6'1", 6'2", 230 something pounds. He's going to be really, really special for us, especially kind of playing more of that weak side where you've got Keenan Pili playing at the mic, and he's going to be probably taking up more of the blocks and things like that. So I think that Arion Carter is going to have a very, very productive year, but still want to see from Jordan Burns. I want to see more from Edwin Spillman. What are the young guys going to give us? I want to see more of Jalen Smith and Caleb Perry because I trust Jeremiah Thielander. Obviously Keenan Pili, Arion Carter, and Jeremiah Thielander. That's your starting 3. They're going to rotate a lot. Doesn't really matter where it's at. We can see some packages where it's AC and JT out there at the same time. I just think that would be unbelievable. So, they're very, very deep inside that room. I'm just looking forward to seeing how they can respond with the pads on. You can tell that they're very close. They're tight knit and they're just hungry to get out here and play some football. So let's move on now to the tight ends. Okay. We spoke about them a little bit. I think that this room is also extremely deep. Didn't really see a whole lot from any of them. I would love to, like we kind of spoke about before, see more of that room just to kind of get a gauge of where we're at. But it was very encouraging to me to hear Coach Abe speak highly of Cole Harrison. Will he ever get some playing time this year, right? I think that there's a pretty good possibility that we would try to work him in. Now he's got, four other guys that are probably ahead of him, but I mean, coach, like run some 2 or 3 tight end sets. Now we're getting to the point, y'all, where we have so much depth in so many different places that you have to, it's kind of a challenge just to manage who to get touches and who to get in the game. That is an issue in itself. And we'll see how Coach Heupel will respond to it. But I mean, I feel great about that room top to bottom. You've got 4 guys that are 6'4" and up, close to 250 pounds that can block for you, that can go out and catch passes. And they've played in Power 5 football for at least a year. So, that's more of a veteran-led group. We should see a lot of production from that entire room. Now, last but certainly not least, let's talk about the quarterbacks. I think that Nico specifically looked very crisp, very clean, on point, just from what we could see. And like we spoke about before, it did sound like from the insiders that he was on point. He was on point. Sounds like Mark was on point. And Gaston Moore, from what I could see, looked really, really good. So, I mean, you have to think that they're carrying a whole lot of confidence. Is Nico being more vocal like Coach Heupel is wanting him to? That's going to be, I think, his next step because he's definitely confident. He's got all the tools. He's very, very special. But, maybe some of those more intangible things, and this is obviously, I'm not saying this to say, hey, this is going to be a huge deal or nothing like that. But obviously, you want to always be getting better in any little way that you can because you never know when we might need that skill set in different situations throughout this season. I think that he gets it though, right? Like he has the pulse of this team. I feel like they're going to move as far as he's moving. And, he's going to understand when, hey, I need to speak to the whole team and just kind of bring us all together or kind of chew them out, whatever it is, right? I think that Nico gets that. And that's not something that I've just seen from the practices, but it's something that I've heard just, again, in his confidence. But yeah, I mean, I feel great about that room as well. So that's going to be it for this video today. Those are my thoughts. Those are the news and the notes. It was a little bit of a slower day. Obviously, I think that Lance Hurd being out there, some for us to see, was probably the story of today. But no news is going to be good news, y'all. So let me know y'all's thoughts down in the comment section. And as always, thank you for sticking all the way to the end. Please make sure to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, share with your friends, family, and other volunteer fans. We'll see y'all on the next one. Thanks. Peace.